Good day, and thanks for watching Black Agenda Report. I'm Margaret Kimberly. Please like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and read blackagendareport.com. On January 3rd, 2026, the U.S. conducted a military attack against Venezuela and kidnapped President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, First Combatant Cilia Flores, bringing them to the U.S., where they are imprisoned in New York City. Since that time, interim President Delcy Rodriguez, herself said to be under a secret indictment, has enacted policy changes, including turning Alex Saab back over to the U.S., allowing the U.S. Southern Command, SOUTHCOM, to operate in Venezuela, and giving the U.S. access to Venezuela oil revenues, which are deposited into a U.S. Treasury account said to total some $13 billion. Our guest is William Camacaro, who will provide analysis. He is a Venezuelan American, former national co-coordinator in the Alliance for Global Justice. He was a co-founder of the Bolivarian Circle of New York, Alberto Lovera, and senior analyst for the Council on Hemispheric Affairs. He holds a master's degree of fine arts and a master's degree in Latin American literature from the City University of New York. And welcome, William. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for having me.
So, William, as you know, and you obviously have been following this situation closely, there have been, to put it mildly, a lot of changes in Venezuela since January 3rd, and also recently the country experienced an earthquake. And there has been, there's a lot of debate about how those of us who always supported sovereignty of the Venezuelan people, always defended Venezuela from interference and attack by the U.S. And there's a lot of debate about how we can view these events. There are those who say the Bolivarian Revolution is alive and well. There are those, such as myself, who say that it's obvious the U.S. is in control. They didn't kidnap the president in order to allow Venezuela to have sovereignty. So by definition, I believe it is not sovereign. What is your take on the situation in Venezuela?
Yes, thank you very much, Margaret. This is a very important issue for the Venezuelan people because basically Venezuela is in a very extreme, difficult moment where his sovereignty is completely compromised, and where basically Venezuela is a quasi neo-colonial country of the United States. And I say quasi neo-colonial country because there are some little things that you can infer that internally there is some kind of struggle. For example, President Petro in a national TV in Colombia, after he visited President Delcy Rodriguez, he said in Colombia that talking to Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela, basically she said that United States want to impose the dollar as a Venezuelan currency. So, and basically Petro denounced that at that moment, the imposition, that imposition against the Venezuelan people. So there are some little issues like that one that, allow you to infer that there is some kind of internal resistance, but at the same time, there are so many concessions to the entire economy to United States. The Rodriguez administration can be best understood, as I can say, as a pragmatic in one way, because they are trying to balance between the need to maintain the domestic legitimacy and also the practical need to establish to maintain the economy and and to basically stabilize the economy. And for that reason, I believe Delcy Rodriguez trying to reach to United States. But at the same time, that relation and cutting off the relation of a sovereign country with other nations of the world, like Russia, China, Iran. So, it's a very, I will say, it's a kind of neo-colonial situation that Venezuela right now is living. And I think that for a lot of Venezuelan people, it's something that is outrage.
So, those of us outside of Venezuela can debate all we want, but as you say, the people of Venezuela they must be in crisis right now to see their government upended by the U.S. And those who argue against what you said, that Venezuela is in a neo-colonial situation now. They say that the communes are still operating, and things of that nature. But the fact is that the U.S. is stealing Venezuela's oil revenue. So Venezuela was always supportive of the Palestinian people. Now they're talking about establishing relations with Israel. All sorts of things that are diametrically opposed to what the Bolivarian Revolution stood for. What is it like for people in Venezuela to be living in this situation?
Well, probably a lot of people have been noticed that in the last 2 months, there has been several protests against the Venezuelan foreign policy in relation with United States. People in Venezuela, the grassroots movement, have been protesting against the USA domination of the country. Also, again, the relation between Israel with the criminal state of Israel, something that was terminated by President Chavez 17 years ago, and basically in a very strong statement, and that was also maintained by President Nicolas Maduro all these times. I believe that that's a horrific concession to the empire. I believe that that's what most of the people in Venezuela, people that have been defending the Bolivarian Revolution, I feel about that concession. But also, I believe that most of those people that have been defending the Bolivarian Revolution for this last 20, 27 years are people that probably are going to be target of United States now that they have their foot there. And they are also worried about that. So they have been showing their worriness that some member of several agencies, some oppressive agencies from United States are there. So people have been denouncing also drone flying over their head and all over the country. So like they are very now, I would say, mapping this country to establish a very accurate, measure of who is who and who is where. And that's a very concerned situation for most of the leftists and progressive people that have been defending the Bolivarian Revolution for almost 30 years. And of course, people are in the street protesting angrily and demanding the end to the USA-Venezuelan relation and the end of the Venezuelan relation with the criminal state of Israel.
And it's interesting, the U.S. is, Venezuela is just one link in the chain of U.S. imperial, what the U.S. wants to have imperial control over the entire region, the Caribbean, Central America, South America. And there is always a demand that countries establish relations with Israel. You mentioned Colombia recently had a presidential election. The new president, who Trump supports, has reestablished relations with with Israel. And this is happening all over the region. What are your thoughts about that? Why does the U.S. want countries in the Americas to have relations with Israel? What do you think that's about?
Well, basically, it's the new Monroe or Don Roy doctrine is behind everything. Donald Trump is behind everything. We have to remember the United States is also a country that is not a sovereignty country. It's basically run by the state of Israel with a bunch of money that they pump to the Congress of the United States and to the President of the United States. And not from now, this is coming from decades. So they have been basically putting the entire USA establishment in their packet, and they are the ones that are basically running the show of the foreign policy and internal policy of the United States. We know that the Heritage Foundation that has been founded by the Israel state is the one that is basically the program that the Trump administration is using to run the country. Is coming from the Heritage Foundation. So all the measures against Black people, people of color, immigrants are taken from, has been written by those people and the Heritage Foundation. And so basically the taking over of the entire region, the entire continent for the Israel establishment is because they have control of the White House and they have control of this country. And they have been able to mobilize their own interest to the entire region using the power of United States. And that's because they, probably Israel is more than 80% destroyed. They are trying to accommodate big part of the region for themselves. They are in Peru right now. They are buying land in Peru and Mexico. They are also they have land in Costa Rica, and they are now trying to buy lands in Colombia. They want to do fracking in Colombia. They are also, of course, in Argentina, in Chile, and now in Bolivia. So they are all over, and they are buying land, and they are trying to penetrate every single political establishment in the entire region to control the entire region and to basically suck all the natural resources that have this continent. They really are able to accomplish what they have been able to do thanks to the Trump administration. And that's something that is very horrific because with people always relate the situation that we are facing right now with the Plan Condor, but this is worse than Plan Condor. This is not the Plan Condor. This is like Plan Condor 5 times bigger and worse because we had in the middle of a fight against imperialism and Zionism at the same time. I don't know if I respond to your question, but
you did. It's it's interesting about Israel. I always Israel does have quite a hold on U.S. politics. Actually, AIPAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee, brags quite openly about how they influence elections in this country. However, the two countries do work together, and I think that the interests of both countries are the same. Israel is an imperialist arm of the U.S., but you are correct in that the way that Trump has accelerated that process and changed that dynamic to make Israel its partner everywhere in the world.
Well, Israel first.
Right. He said America first, but it's actually Israel first. But you mentioned it's called the Monroe Doctrine. President James Monroe, 200 years ago, said that this hemisphere was basically the property of the U.S. and not of any other power. People are calling it the Monroe Doctrine, which I sort of understand. But the pressure on Venezuela, not just Venezuela, we have to mention Cuba. One of the first things they did was prevent Venezuela from sending any oil to Cuba. There's an embargo, a siege against Cuba, depriving it of electricity, endangering people's lives, increasing the infant mortality rate. You could call it, I believe it fits the definition of a genocide, preventing other Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, all had oil which they would send to Cuba, and the U.S. is preventing that from happening through a variety of means, threatening countries, threatening officials, threatening them with ending immigration of their citizens to the U.S., all kinds of ways to harass and intimidate, to destroy those revolutionary governments, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. The new president of Colombia, Trump's guy, has ended relations with Cuba and Nicaragua. So it's part of a much larger plan. But and I think everybody agrees with, the how I just described this situation. But people don't agree. People on the left, people who were always defenders of Venezuela's sovereignty, do not agree. And there are people who have a different view of how things are playing out. They are more prepared to, I say, engage in, and I understand it, a kind of wishful thinking about how much control the U.S. actually has over Venezuela. And I don't want to ascribe motive to anybody. I'm not a mind reader, but I just look at what I think are the facts. But talk to us about this debate on the left about Venezuela.
Well, basically, I have been saying, and I'm talking for myself, for the beginning, that we should definitely defend the Venezuelan people from the attack that's coming from imperialist country like United States and the state of Israel. I also believe that we are not in the position really to have it's for me it's extremely difficult to basically defend a country that is basically acting as a puppet of United States. Independently, that I have been able to see that there are some very some underground way of resistance. But I have also to say that internally the country is having a big fight, because there are a lot of people that, this is something that has not been people are not talking here, but there is a very strong conflict internally, and from those that believe that we should not have accept anything with any agreement with United States, and for those that believe that we have to basically deny the state of Israel to have an embassy in Venezuela, and for those that are basically supporting those measures. So there is a very strong fight internally in Venezuela that a lot of people don't see. And I'm basically more close to those that are ready to fight back, and that they don't, they are extremely worried about this situation that Venezuelan people are facing. This is not something that Venezuela is going to coming out very easily. We are talking that Iraq has been in that situation for more than 20 years already, 23 years. So Iraq and Venezuela has the same neo-colonial situation right now. So, and the fact that when the Trump administration threatened the President Delcy Rodriguez, and said, and basically demand that he want total, that's what he said, total access to the Venezuela resources, because in otherwise he would burn the entire country. And she accept that. In the name of more than 30 million people, for me, that is no negotiable. You cannot negotiate something like that. So you are negotiating the future of more than 30 million people, and we don't know how we are going to escape from the schema, from this framework that the United States has been imposed through the extortion against a government that was not willing to fight back. I'm sorry to say, yeah, they were not willing to fight back. Certainly, United States have several, the biggest army in the entire region against the Venezuelan government. So ever before, against any other country in South America. Certainly, Venezuela was completely alone. No one in the regions was supporting Venezuela. Even Petro, even Lula da Silva, they abandoned Venezuela to his own destiny. Even they collaborate with the State Department, requesting the famous ballot to President Maduro when he won the election in 2024 and July 28. So, and they didn't, even Petro, few weeks before President Maduro were kidnapped, said in a national TV that he said basically, literally, to the public that was there, you know that I don't recognize that government because we don't know what happened in those elections. So President Maduro was completely alone at that moment. But at the same time that I, in some way, say that Venezuela was facing the biggest army to the world, I had to say Venezuela doesn't have, only guns and gun machine guns. Venezuela has very well sophisticated equipment that was not used the day of the kidnapping. And that for me is extremely suspicious that you have all kind of weapons. Drones. Venezuela has drones. Venezuela has some kind of missile that only one soldier can, with those missiles, can portable missiles that only one soldier were capable to destroy one of those airplanes that were flying over Venezuela. Venezuela had weapons that easily could have destroyed some of those helicopters that were not used. The day of the kidnapping, President Maduro's bodyguard has only guns and machine guns, only bullets. They didn't have any sophisticated weapons. And that, for me, is a big concern. The other issue that I feel that, yeah, you don't accept, if someone call you to impose that I want the total access to the natural resources, and you accept that, you are not defending the sovereignty of the country, period.
I'm glad you brought up Iraq because I think sometimes people forget that slowly over time, little by little, the U.S. Takes these actions, and it's more than 20 years ago now, the invasion of Iraq. But Iraq's oil revenues are kept in an account in the United States. So as you're pointing out, there's a precedent for that. And I'm glad you also pointed out these so-called leftist leaders who did not defend Venezuela. And that's part of a pattern. President Lula took the lead in occupying Haiti some 20 years ago. That's something we should not forget. President Petro was sometimes left, sometimes not. But there were ways to support Venezuela. And that support was lacking. And now the entire region is endangered, I think, by that lack of resolve from those other leaders. And I want to point out also there were Cubans protecting Maduro who lost their lives, 32 men who were killed by U.S. troops on that night. Maduro was correct that he could trust the Cubans, but it seems he couldn't trust some Venezuelans, is what you seem to be saying.
So let me say something about it. Yes, 32 and 27 Venezuelans died that day defending President Maduro. And as I mentioned, they didn't have the kind of weapon to repel the USA invasion. So, but I want also to mention something that I always mention, that the only people that died with the Venezuelan people defending the sovereignty of Venezuela, and by how to say, uh, uh, and because they were defending the sovereignty of Venezuela, they were defending the sovereignty of the entire region, because as a consequence that Venezuela, they were able to take over. Now, as you mentioned, the entire region is in danger. So that fight was extremely critical for the entire region. And also, I want to mention another point, because a lot of people from the left say, so remember that Fidel Castro said to Chavez, don't immolate yourself, the day of the coup against President Chavez in 2002. So, and that's true. Fidel Castro mentioned that. But when people mention that quote, they are mention a quote out of the context, because basically at that moment Chavez was completely alone negotiating with those people, militaries, that have the entire support of the United States. And basically, a lot of people that were close to Chavez at that moment, they were able to see that Chavez had a gun very close to him all the time. And so many people were thinking that at that moment, they were thinking that he will commit suicide. So, and immediately, Fidel called him and say, "Hey, don't immolate yourself." That's one thing. And then when you compare the situation of Chavez and you compare the situation of Delcy Rodriguez and even Nicolas Maduro, so when you compare, but that special moment of Chavez that was kidnapped, he was more than 40 hours completely isolated, without able to see anything. We saw many people getting to his jail and putting a letter on front of him and requesting him to sign the letter saying that he's resigning to be president of Venezuela. And he didn't sign the paper. So knowing that they could kill him anytime. So Chavez had the weapon, the gun in his head, you know? That's not accused, oh, we have a gun in our head. No. So uh, Chavez was denied. He didn't sign the resignation letter. However, Chavez was resistant, because Chavez secretly make a letter and sign a letter saying, "I not resign," to the people to the Venezuelan people of Venezuela. I just want to let them know that I had not resigned. Hugo Chavez, blah blah blah, and he signed the letter. So that is resistance, and so you cannot compare that. Oh, Chavez didn't immolate himself. You want that for Delcy Rodriguez? No, we want him to resist.
Thank you for pointing that out. Fidel said, don't immolate himself. Don't
Mm.
sacrifice yourself, I suppose is the best way to look at it. But you're right. People are taking it out of context in order to defend Delcy Rodriguez when she should not be defended. As
And also, the other issue is that she accepted the agreement one day after. She called the Trump administration and said, okay, I accept all the conditions. So she surrendered one day after.
Yes, an immediate surrender. As we close, is there, and I want to have you back actually again, so we don't have to discuss all of it at one time. In about a minute, is there anything you want to add that I didn't ask?
Yes, basically, I I I, I want to invite everybody to endorse the resistance of Venezuelan people to this situation. There are so many grassroots groups that are organizing themselves and that have been protesting against the USA domination and against the Israel presence in Venezuela. There are a bunch of proof that people that are protesting against the embassy of the United States in Venezuela, and you don't see that in the mainstream media. And also even the Venezuelan Telesur doesn't show those protests. So I have been sending information about it, but also I believe we will have a statement we have today published about we have a group called the Bolivarian Anti-Imperialist Alliance. So that will be, we will publish a statement today about, our regret to this relation with United States and Israel, and also our condemnation to the relation with the state of Israel, and our support to all those groups that are in resistance against USA imperialism in Venezuela.
Thank you. And when you, I can put that information on in the video description. So any links to information you want, we'll put there. So people, once they see this video, will see that. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, William Camacaro, joining us from New York to provide analysis on Venezuela. Thank you so much for joining me.
Gracias, Margaret.